Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I want to take a slightly different right turn today, and I want to talk about cooking. Let's be real. If we haven't got good, nourishing, life-giving food going into our bodies every single week, guess what? That's going to ripple out into all aspects of our work and our life. And one of the things that I have started to really get into is cooking with my Instant Pot. Now, I had to find the perfect guest to really simplify how to work and how to cook with an Instant Pot. And lo and behold, the universe certainly did provide. His name is Jeffrey Eisner. He is the blogger and creator over at Pressure Luck Cooking. It's a leading, acclaimed, and easy to follow recipe blog all about cooking with an Instant Pot. Now, you've probably seen him on the Food Network, Good Morning America, Rachel Ray, and more, because you know what? His first cookbook became an international bestseller within a week of its release. His second book that's come out today is called The Lighter Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook, and it features more health-conscious recipes tailored for those who are on keto, paleo, gluten-free, or even diabetic-friendly lifestyles. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Jeffrey Eisner. Hey, Jeff.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Mary.
I'm so glad you're here. And I really think that this is a fun topic because, you know, we do talk and simplify cash flow and budgets and mindset and all of that. So it's nice to take a departure and let's talk about food today.
Yeah, sounds delicious to me.
Yeah. So first off, how in the world did you get into cooking with an Instant Pot? Like, this is a thing that's sort of taken over your life in the last few years, right?
To say the least, it's actually changed my life.
Yeah.
I always loved to cook. It was therapy for me. It was a passion. And my cooking school was my grandmother. I never had any formal training other than you put a little bit of this in here, Jeffala, you put a little bit of that, and that was it.
Yeah.
When I was, the goal was to be an actor when I was younger, and that didn't exactly pan out. It just wasn't. I like stability in my life, so I went the route of going into the public relations world where I was a video producer. And then I realized I'm not very happy doing this. I was never fulfilled. And I would come home and just be stressed out, and I would cook to make myself more calm. So I've always also that intertwined with having to have the latest gadgets in life. I discovered the Instant Pot about going on 4 years ago now when it kind of first came out. And it was on Amazon. And it was just looking me in the face and it was like, buy me. So I did. And I saw the reviews were super, they were really strong. And I was like, you know what? I got to give this thing a try. Let me see how it works. And I got it. It came. And then I was like, where do I start? It was kind of intimidating. It's also a pressure cooker, which pressure cookers have a negative connotation from back in the day. They're just kind of scary looking if you look at old school pictures of them. And I was like, well, what am I going to do here? I mean, I'm not going to be afraid of this thing. I'm going to conquer it. And then I went online looking and I saw a lot of people were afraid to use it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is an opportunity for me who worked in PR as a video producer to come up with my own video, to learn it, share it out, and to see what happens, see if I can get excited by it and see what people have to say. Well, I made a mac and cheese recipe in there and I shared it out into the ether. I just went on to cold calling, knocking on the door, back in the old day, found these groups on Facebook, started a YouTube channel, and then it just took off. It's it seemed like people, because, you go to YouTube for everything nowadays. You can go from, learning how to fix your shoelaces to learning how to do your plumbing in your house.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know people will probably search for this. And it was an opportunity I saw and I took it. And I was like, look, I love making the videos. It's fun. And if anything comes of it, great. If not, well, it was fun. And what have you got to lose, right?
Yeah.
And
that's the thing, is that you have really created some fun, playful way to approach, like you said, it's a very intimidating kitchen appliance. It's not like a toaster. You plug it in and just stick the toast in, done. There are bits and bobs and buttons and things. And oh my gosh, it was super intimidating for me when I first got mine 7 or 8 months ago. And
right.
I have to be honest, I think it sat in the box for a good month before I was like, I don't know what to do with this. My brother gave it to me as a gift. And so your videos, which, side note, everything that Jeff talks about in today's conversation, you can find over the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. And I highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel because your videos are fun. You're just an everyday guy, just like my brother, who would be like, okay, so here's the real deal. Here's how this thing works. So let's talk about that. So if somebody was like me and they have had the Instant Pot in a box in the corner of their kitchen for a long time, super intimidated, like give me a couple of tips that would help them get over that hump.
Okay, well, first of all, you have it. So let's waste not, want not, shall we? Let's take it out of the box and have some fun. It's look at cooking, number one, as it's fun. It's not the end of the world. You're making some food, right? Yeah. And if all else fails, you order some pizza,
right?
or a salad, yes. Or maybe some salad on your pizza. I don't know. But just don't take it too seriously. Look at it and be like, I'm going to have some fun with this. Start with something that's very simple. Just, a soup, a quick pasta, which is very easy to make in the pot, some rice, some hard-boiled eggs could not be easier to do. Mm-hmm. Eggs is 2 ingredients. You're going to put some water in and you're going to put eggs, and that's it. And you're going to be blown away that you made hard-boiled eggs in this newfound fashion. So start small is my tip. Don't be freaked out. It's just cooking. And, just let loose. And from there, you're going to see either you're going to enjoy it or you're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be one or the other. Or you might have a great success the first time, or it might be, what did I do wrong? And you maybe want to see how you can fix it the next time around. So it's really just, just have confidence in yourself doing this. You can do this. If I can do this, this is the number one thing here, Mary. I am not professional. As I told you, I'm an amateur cook, guy who just likes to cook. And if I can do this, literally anybody can do it. Yeah. It's really quite simple to do.
And so here's the things that I learned by watching your videos. First and foremost, I didn't know this, but there's those little lips on the top of the lid. You can pop it over and stick it into the little notch. And so you're not burning yourself on the hot steam or otherwise. I was like, oh, well, duh. No one told me that. I didn't know that. And then second, you talk about in your like, okay, here, how to get started video. You don't need to worry about all the buttons. There's just like manual or pressure cook. So what buttons should we start with first?
That's the thing about the Instant Pot. Like the most, I think, intimidating thing about it are all the buttons. Right. And forget. And I say in my book, forget them. Really, don't pay attention. A lot of them they're just presets. That's really all they are. I only use the button that says saute, which transforms this thing basically into a pot on the stove. Yep. It's picture using a frying pan, a skillet, a pot, whatever. That's what it does. You can saute veggies, whatever. And then you'll switch the function basically from that to the pressure cook function. And then it's about just setting time. And that's really it. Yeah. It's just a few buttons you're going to care about.
Which I can imagine you living in Queens and New York, you've probably got limited counter space. And so it's nice to have just one place to saute and cook from. And you're not having to do multiple things in multiple places, right?
And in one pot. Let's not forget one pot instead of having, because that's the thing about a slow cooker. If you want to do some things in there, which is, I'm not going to knock a slow cooker, but the Instant Pot, in my opinion, has put it onto the top shelf at this point because you can't really saute in them. If you want to brown some meat before, you got to do it in the frying pan and then put it in the slow cooker. Not to mention it takes hours to do something in the slow cooker, whereas the Instant Pot will give you the same thing in literally a fraction of the time with, in my opinion, more tender and flavorful results. It's just about convenience, and as you know, it's all about simplifying here, and that's exactly what this is. Yeah,
and I at the beginning thought, oh, do I need to buy all the accessories and the things? And I'll be frank, I actually bought some accessories that were on half off sales or whatever, but then I realized I don't need all the stuff. I just need to get started. And so the first recipe I started with was literally how to cook rice, plain and simple white rice. And when I got more confident just doing that, I was like, well, I could probably make quinoa. I could probably make soups. I mean, it does require a little bit of baby steps to get that confidence, right?
100%. It's like with anything, you want to start small. Mm-hmm. Don't be too. I could be a little ambitious at first. I think the first thing I made was a mac and cheese. I think the second thing that I attempted was a like pot roast, which is still not super ambitious, but for, some people are intimidated with the thought of making meat in a big roast.
Right.
But it's the easiest thing in the world. But it's exactly that, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So your first cookbook was all yummy, super flavorful foods that are like comfort foods and things, right? So the second book is all about cooking lighter. So what does cooking lighter look like for you these days? Like what recipes are you loving right now?
Yeah. Well, cooking lighter to me, it's such an ambiguous term, really, because I want a million people wanted a book that had keto, I wanted paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free, low carb, everything. So I'm like, those are just separate volumes in themselves, and I'm like, I'm only going to do one lighter book, and I'm going to make it umbrella everything as best as possible. So that's the thing with if you're on keto, you can have bacon and heavy cream at every meal, right? And cheese and nonstop if you want. And you can slather it all over meat. It's fine, right? But if you are paleo, you can't have any cheese whatsoever, and you can have plenty of sweet fruits. But on keto, you can't have too many of the sweet fruit. It's just a whole thing. So in order to make everybody happy with the book, I specify which recipes are which lifestyle compliant. And if it isn't, I'll put a little plus sign saying how you can make it lifestyle compliant that way. It's so, you know what I mean? So like in terms of like food itself, my mission with this book was to show you that eating lighter in general doesn't mean you have to sacrifice literally a lick of flavor for anything, because there's always substitutions that because if you think of a recipe, it's like an ensemble of characters, right, that go into it. Since they're all working together, there are certain things you won't even know that you're not putting in, versus if it was more of a comfort type recipe, which that's certainly known for doing as well. So, you in the book, you have, for instance, crispy kale rice. I'm not interested in kale typically. It's not really my favorite thing in the world. But if you're going to give it a little bit of like a nice little crisp in the pot and then toss it with some brown rice and some mushrooms, which I happen to love. If you don't like mushrooms, don't add mushrooms. And if you want to give it a little bit of a sweet like flavor to it, like by adding some coconut aminos, which is a fabulous substitute for soy sauce, less sodium than that. And it's gluten-free. There's no soy in it. It's little things like that. And then actually in the book, I also, in the introduction, list an entire pantry that I suggest you have, all easy to find ingredients. No, I'm not sending you running to the craziest health food markets to find these things. They can be found in pretty much any market or our friend online.
Yeah. And maybe that's the fear, and I'll be the first to raise my hand. I think if you have gotten used to making kind of packaged processed foods like mac and cheese in a box or, frozen meals for convenience, and now you're moving back to whole foods that don't come in a box and aren't, super chemical processed, it can be scary because it's like, oh, right, we're using real ingredients here to make the same things that are 9 times more healthy, more likely, and more flavorful and actually nourishing too, right?
Yes, absolutely, indeed. It's exactly that. And like, it's like if you look at a box of mac and cheese in a store and you see, it's like, it's a little horrifying to read the label sometimes. And you're better off, even though you're putting like a bunch of cheese in there and dairy and all that stuff, you're much better off making it yourself if you're going to do it. And it's going to taste 1,000 times better. It's one of the easiest recipes also. Granted, it's hard to find a light mac and cheese, I'd say. But look, there are options if you wanted to do like use low fat cheese, or even like a vegan cheese instead. You can make it happen.
And see, I'm curious what your thought process is on this, but for me, I am a vegetarian, though I'm not a diehard, but I always look to 80-20 rule. 80% of the food that I put into my body every single week, super healthy, clean, whole foods, yummy stuff, green leafy vegetables and all. And 20% could be the mac and cheese, could be a little bit of bread, it could be this, that, or and the other. And I mean, how do you go about eating and cooking lighter for yourself?
That's exactly like the best way, in my opinion, to do it. Like you shouldn't deprive yourself of the comfort things in life. Right. You shouldn't, because you're going to just, one day, if you're, let's say you're like, I'm going to go on a diet, and I hate that word, I really do. And you're like, I'm just going to eat this, and this today. And like, and then for the next months, 2 months or whatever, when the time comes and then you're at a party or whatever, and you're like, I've reached where I'm happy where I am now. And then like, I could eat whatever I want again. And it's like, then the pizza's there and you eat that, and the Chinese food's there, you eat it all. Like, you know what I mean? Like when it just, all that hard work is kind of goes away. It's so much wiser and more satisfying and sustainable to, like you said, 20% comfort in my life. And then the rest of it, I could be healthy. It's about just fitting it in at appropriate times and while you're doing it. And that's, to me, the key to sustaining like a happy body and a happy attitude and outlook on life.
Totally. And so you're not in that constant shame cycle of binging and binge deprivation. Right. You're changing your relationship with food altogether, and also with cooking. And that's what I think has been interesting for me as I learn about cooking more healthy, using real whole foods, fruits and vegetables, all the things, especially herbs and spices. Like that's the thing, right? That's your gig altogether. It is a game changer. You take the fear out, you experiment and play, and food doesn't become this evil thing that you're, grappling with and push and pull and all that. It becomes more fun, right?
100%. Absolutely. I think what's exciting about it is that once you try something that's lighter and you realize that, that you're controlling what you're putting in, and you're making, let's say, instead of using sour cream, I'm going to use some Greek yogurt. It makes a difference. It really does. And then you see how delicious it can taste. You'll tell yourself, well, I could do this. I could eat like this. And then it's rewarding. It feels good. And you feel better when you start to slim down a little bit from doing that. Now, of course, that being said, you can eat as light as you wish, but it's all about portion control, because if you eat the entire pot, it's still, you know what I mean?
Yes.
You have to control yourself. So just because something's lighter doesn't mean it's okay to eat it all, the entire pot that you just made of food. It's about portioning it properly.
Yeah, and I remember you talked about like what was it? The anagram for deep lifestyle. Yes. Let's walk through that real quick.
Yeah, I call it living deeply, exactly deep, because who doesn't like a nice anagram, right? Or whatever we want to call it. Yeah, anagram. D is for determination. You have to be determined if you want to do something like this. The first E will go for exercise. I think it's important. Now exercise is a very general term, and some people just don't even want to hear it, and I understand. But exercise counts if you literally walk around your block one time a week. Like totally. That's exercise. If you weren't doing it before, guess what? It's progress. And then as you continue to do it more, your body will get used to it more, and you could do it a little bit more. Or of course, it could also range to something as crazy as waking up at 5 a.m. on a Sunday and doing, CrossFit, whatever works for you. It's just something works, anything. The other E would be for eating wisely, like being mindful about what you eat and when you do it. You don't want to eat something at, right before you go to sleep, because you're going to wake up in the morning and feel like there's a brick in your stomach, and it's going to offset your day, as in like, why even bother? I already feel like I've screwed up. Yeah. And you just eat it's a lot of it has to do with that mentality. It's just think before you eat, and then P is portion control for deep. And it's like we just said, you have to just really just be mindful about how much you're eating. And eat slowly. That's my biggest downfall. I can shovel food, and then you have to just be slow. Like it's a perfect time to do it when you're, when you have company, of course, because you can have a conversation, put the phone down for a second, things like that. Answer an email in between if you're by yourself. It's really about that. Yeah. So those are the 4 things.
That's good. I love that. And it's always a nice reminder. These are things that we intuitively, deep down inside know is true, but we forget, right? Like this is the simple parts of life that actually make eating and cooking food more joyful and actually, deeper. I believe it affects your digestion system. It affects your energy levels. It affects everything. So it ripples out when you look at joy or look at cooking food with joy. It changes everything.
I agree.
So let's talk about our pantry. So given the recipes in your cookbook, what should we stock in our pantry as staples specifically for pressure cooking?
For pressure cooking specifically, the number one rule is no liquid, no pressure. You need to have liquid in a pot, enough of it to come to pressure. because just the process is that, it's essentially just boiling water or any kind of liquid that's in there, and that it gets to the point where there's nowhere for it to go because the lid is securely put on there. And that's what it's almost like a little tea kettle. Then a little pin will pop up in the lid. It'll lock, and then it cooks.
Yep.
So liquid. And so that being said, broth to me, it always adds more flavor to things. Now, whether this be any kind of broth that you love, like if I love this product called Better Than Bouillon, it's great. But I typically like to use low sodium broths when I'm using it because honestly, the difference is very minor in my opinion, especially since we're just using it as a flavor base. You could always make your own broth by simply just, whether you're a vegetarian, just get a bunch of vegetables, leave the skins on, whatever vegetables you want, and some water, and just boil it in there for about 2 hours. Let it pressure cook.
Yep.
And when it's off, when it cools, season it how you want to season it.
Yeah.
The same thing with chicken or beef broth. Use the bones of the chicken, the crazy parts you normally might not get, like the feet, things like that. You would use to make something like that. So broth is super important.
And
another thing,
the suggestion you had there of Better Than Bouillon, I swear, you guys, this is the jam. It is so good, so flavorful, and it has vegetarian and non-veggie options. And also, I like it because it's small. It doesn't take up a lot of space in the pantry, whereas if you're buying big jugs of broth, it can take up a lot secret ninja trick there, for sure.
It's great.
Yeah.
Great.
What else do I need in my pantry?
I think you definitely need some seasoned salt, because to me, seasoned salt is I think it's my go-to seasoning. It's less sodium than iodized salt, than regular salt, by a bunch actually. If you look at the labels between the two, it's less, and has a lot more flavor going for it as well. It's not spicy. If we're going to name brands, I don't have a partnership with this brand or anything, but I love Lawry's. It's like the classic, and you can find it like at any market. It's like, if I have to pick like one spice, it's going to be that for pretty much everything. So definitely have some of that on hand. Of course, you want to have it's important, whether you're following dairy or not dairy with your life, have some element of that, whether that be a milk or like a half and half, or a non-dairy milk, like an unsweetened almond milk, cashew milk. Don't get one that has like the flavors like vanilla or sweet, just because it'll substitute for milk. Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll never pressure cook most dairy under pressure because it can curdle, and you don't want to do that. Like cheese, you add that at the very end. But non-dairy milks you could add prior because, well, guess what? There's no dairy in it. Yeah. And I explain all this in my book as well. So I would say those things are very, very key to have for sure. And just always have it on hand. Have some rice, have some quinoa, some beans. You can have some eggs. Any of those things are just important to have in your pantry at all times. And I go into this in great detail in the book, and I give you a list. Literally, if you ever want to go to the market and stock your kitchen, it's there. But those are the key basics.
And you know what I love about the book in particular is the way it's laid out. The table of contents, you can quickly look through all the recipes, see which ones are keto or vegan or vegetarian, and it's very easy to follow. And then anything that isn't vegetarian, for me, I just swap out, like say if it's a beef stock to a veggie stock, you can always make substitutions. But when it comes to stocking my pantry, what I have been doing lately is, if there's one thing on your list that I don't have, I just add one thing in my shopping cart every single week. So I just build it slowly over time.
Smart.
But yeah, like my key go-tos are big bags of dried black beans, rice, quinoa, things like that. And same with the spices. So if I don't have, bay leaves or thyme or whatever, I just build it one at a time, one per week as I go on. So I build the pantry.
Yeah, that's a very smart thing to do. Very smart. And wholesale clubs is a great place also to stock up on these things, because they're going to last you forever. It's a better price for how much more you're getting. And they have Yeah. And, another tip that I just thought of, no matter where you are in the world listening to this, it's more than likely sure that you've got a Buy Nothing group, BUY Nothing. Again, the links are all in the show notes. And that is such a brilliant resource. So if you find Buy Nothing Manhattan or Buy Nothing Phoenix or Buy Nothing Paris, you can actually put out onto the Facebook group, hey, I'm in search of new spices for my pantry. And people in your neighborhood or in your area say, hey, I've got a whole pantry of spices that I'm not using. You can pick them up for free. So, think about things like that are just clever. So you're not having to fork over a lot of money to do this stuff. It can be very, very simple. Those are awfully nice people.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing. Trust me, Jeff,
Yes,
amazing.
I
So,
trust you.
so talk to me about cooking for picky eaters or kids. What advice would you give parents?
Don't tell them what's in it. No, but seriously, I mean, you have obviously, if there's an allergy, you should of course always be
Sure.
mindful of that. But in all honesty, that's a rule I have. Like, if as long as they're, it's not going to violate a dietary restriction or a religious thing like being kosher or whatever. Don't tell them sometimes
Yeah.
what's in a dish. Just say, try this, and I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, they won't even realize that. Like, let's say they hate cauliflower, because let me tell you something. In the lighter book, cauliflower is one of the best substitutes for potatoes,
Mm.
and because potatoes are full of starch and they're amazing. You could do a million things with them, but when it comes down to them being soft, when a mashed potato, or like a chowder, where sometimes we have potatoes in there. When it's cauliflower and it's softened, I don't even like cauliflower, by the way, when it's on its raw state. I'm not into it. But when it's cooked and it's softened up, it's an amazing substitute. Oftentimes with a soup, like my cream of cauliflower in the book,
Yeah.
we do a pureeing step before we even serve it. So you don't even know it's really in there. It just becomes part of the soup. And when it seasons up a little bit, you don't even realize. You just say, honey, try this. And, if you're a soup lover, because let's get real, who doesn't love soup? Just try it out and then don't tell them. And then they're like, guess what? You just ate cauliflower or something like that. And they'll be like, what?
Yeah.
And I think that in that moment, it gets the people excited about it. Like, wow, I like cauliflower. I didn't realize I liked it. And, that happened to me the first time when I ate escargot. My parents were like, don't, I mean, of course, that's not the healthiest thing in the world, but they were like, they wouldn't tell me what it really was. And I ate it and I was obsessed with it. And like, you just ate snails. And I'm like, what? No. So
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it. Truly. It's like,
Yeah.
just try it out. Trust me. You're going to enjoy this. If you cook, especially if you're the cook in the household, what choice do they have anyway, right? Like, you're cooking for them. So it's like, give it a try. And if it's, I feel like kids nowadays, I don't have children, but I have a niece and nephew. Well, two nephews now. And they're so impressionable at such a young age with food and they can become picky, like just like that it's like, incorporate it earlier if you can. And I think they'll eventually take to these things.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I had read somewhere some long time ago that your taste buds, the actual cells on your tongue, change every 7 years. And so things that you thought as a child, ooh, I don't eat avocados, or ooh, I don't eat cauliflower, or whatever it is, you actually might be surprised. You might actually like it now, because I'm still on the hump of, I don't know if I can eat olives and brine foods. Like, it's just not my thing. But maybe if I'm open-minded and try it out, then who knows, Again, that goes back to what you were saying earlier of just having fun and experimenting with it as well.
Yeah, and I think if you want to eat lighter in general, you need to be a little open-minded. You can't be super stubborn in your ways, because if you're making the choice to eat lighter, you have to be a little open-minded as a result of it. No, it's not going to be like going to the drive-through and getting like a triple cheeseburger. That's not what we're doing here. But it doesn't mean it's going to be any less satisfying on the taste buds or the stomach. You're going to feel. It's really about just, and I think I know this from my own experience. Trying new things and trying food, and then realizing what I'm putting in my body is way better for me than if I were to have gone to the drive-through or to eat a super like indulgent dish. Yet I'm just as satisfied after eating. I'm going to make the choice to go that way, especially if some results. When I look at myself in the mirror, it pays off. It really does.
Yeah. And, I really appreciated reading in your book. You talk about in your introduction your own weight loss journey and wellness journey, for that matter. It sounds like for you, the keeping weight off has been a struggle for a long time, just the same as me. Like, I am right there in that same boat with you. What have you learned along the way, like that you wish you knew earlier on when it comes to eating lighter?
I think that that it's about really finding the balance, and to remind yourself the other stuff will always be there. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Although when the pandemic began, I got a little freaked out when all my favorite Chinese restaurants were closed for a period of time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I had I known, I would have eaten this the last 3 months straight. But
Yeah.
no, thankfully, a lot of them have come back.
Yeah.
But no, it's about telling yourself the food, the pizza, the egg rolls, they're always going to be there in the
Yeah.
future, and you can reward. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not going anywhere, and you can have that, and you can certainly eat it, and it's just be a little more mindful. If you know that you're going to have some grand, fantastic family style meal at an Italian restaurant and do it up with all the carbs and the amazingness, as you should if you're doing a meal like that, right? Plan for it. Just eat lighter that week. And guess what? Don't starve yourself by any stretch of the imagination. Just make more light conscious efforts when I am lighter, when you're eating more, when you're planning something like that in your life. And I think that's what keeps it sustainable, and that's what keeps us happy.
And it reminds me also of, I don't know did you read that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear? He talks about that in particular of as you're changing habits to something that's more life-giving, it's a matter of repetition. So for me, 4 months ago, I would have been like, you're not going to get any kale into my body anytime soon. No way, not even hiding and sneaking it in. But I've just started experimenting with cooking with kale or green leafy vegetables, collard greens, all of that. And actually, I love it. Like, I'm so a kale person now than I ever was before. And it takes that repetition of experimenting, trying new dishes, seeing what you like. And your taste buds also do change along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, definitely. I really do, and I agree with what you said about the taste buds. I think they definitely do shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot involved in it, and it's just at the end of the day, it's food. Let's just tell us that. And we should also remind ourselves that what we're eating here isn't if you don't like it, you just don't try. You don't eat it again.
Right.
It isn't a big. There's a lot larger fish to fry, so to speak, in our lives than worrying too much about how something might taste. So just what have you got to lose other than trying? And of course, know if you're allergic to it or something prior. You don't want to have any issues there. But it just really comes down to what have you got to lose? Try it.
So what are your favorite recipes from the second cookbook?
There's so many, and my goal, like I said, was that everything had to taste like it wasn't lighter per se. It had to taste like it was a full, unbelievably delicious meal. I love my pork pozole recipe in there, or I should say pozole. I know I was pronounced that it's more of an S sound to it, even though it's spelled with a Z. It's a fantastic Mexican stew that's very reliant on chilies in there, but not spicy ones. We use ancho chilies, which is essentially just dried poblano peppers. So delicious. I love the chicken cacciatore that I have in there. Truly fantastic. And the way I do mine is I lighten it up a little bit. I use no sodium added tomato, products when I put them in there. And you can always add, if it doesn't taste salty enough or whatever for you, which is, by the way, very rare that you'll ever try one of my recipes and feel like it needs more seasoning, I feel like you can always add a little bit more at the end.
Cool.
Something like that. And, you're a vegetarian, and I love Indian food, and I have tofu tikka masala instead of chicken tikka masala. Really delicious. And it's just loaded with protein and good stuff in there.
I'm hungry now. Thank you.
Yeah.
You have enticed my taste buds. And if you guys are curious as well, I highly recommend checking this out. His website again is pressureluckcooking.com. And the second cookbook came out today. So you can find that in bookstores all over the world or even at your local bookstore right down the corner. It's called The Lighter Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook. Easy recipes for a slimmer, healthier you. Now, Jeff, I have a few questions as we wrap up. And thank you again so much for your time. I think, hopefully, just breaking down the fear factor of using this newfangled machine with all the buttons and gadgets. It really is quite simple and really fun to play with. So here are my questions for you. These are questions I like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. First and foremost, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Um, I'm not the heaviest reader, and when I do read, I like it to be really light.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun right now, and I miss travel so much.
Yes.
It's been, I think we all are, a great deal. This guy, when I was in Palm Springs a year ago, I found this book of this guy named Charles Phoenix, and it's Addicted to Americana, and it's a super kitschy, fun book with all these like landmarks and stuff throughout the country, and just I love kitschy things, and it's a great escape for me to just have some mindless fun and look at all the crazy things that this country has to offer, and to put them on the list to at some point visit them. So that's something that I enjoy. I like to keep things as lighthearted as possible. Sometimes I feel like, especially this past year, it's been kind of heavy on a lot of us. So I like to, I like to escape.
Yeah, no,
and that's what I feel like. Yeah.
That's a great book recommendation. And, I think sometimes we fall down the rabbit hole of self-development books or professional books, and it's like, it's just a heavy rabbit hole. It's nice to have something that's light and it gets your imagination sparked in all things. So we'll put the link in the show notes for that book for people if you guys want to check it out. So tell me, who's somebody in your network that you know personally that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe we'll have them on the podcast one day.
I mean, I'm going to say this is because I feel like I was introduced to you from her as my cousin, Denise Silverman. And she, to me, is one of the most, I can't think of anybody who's more of a go-getter than her. She was a huge up-and-coming public relations star in New York back when she was in her 20s. And then she and her husband, my cousin Mike, she married in. Mike is actually my blood cousin. They just upped their life and moved to Austin, where she started and followed her passion with wedding planning industry. And then she quickly became like the top event planning company in Austin. And then she after doing that for quite some time, very successfully, she switched gears again. And now she's into the wine industry. And it's fascinating for me to watch somebody build something from literally nothing, which she's done multiple times. And she's an incredibly wonderful person, so inclusive, cares about everybody else before herself. And she's also very involved with the Texas 4000, I believe it's called. It raises awareness for cancer. It's a big bike ride. I think they do from like Alaska to, is it Texas? I'm not sure. It's 4,000 miles. So that sounds about right. So she inspires me a lot. And when I started Pressure Luck, actually, she was somebody that I kept telling myself, it was inspiring for me that if she did this, maybe I can do something like that for myself.
Denise
so I would say Denise
is a superstar. I've known her for probably 15 years now. She is a superstar. So yes, I will link her up in the show notes. If people are curious to learn about Denise and all the things that she's up to, you can click over at thesimplifierspodcast.com and hook up there. I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful that I'm alive. I really am. It's just been a crazy year. I'm grateful for, me and my partner, Richard, both got this thing when everything just stopped in early March last year, when no one knew what was really going on. And it was around the same exact time Tom Hanks had gotten it. And I just kept checking Tom Hanks' Twitter every day, praying that he was still alive. Yeah. I'm like, if Tom Hanks is still alive, maybe I'll be okay.
Yes.
But it was just so scary. And I think a lot of us have put a lot of things into perspective for a lot of us. And I'm just really, truly grateful to be here. And above all else, that's what I have to say. It was scary for a little bit. And
I know that I'm grateful for you, and I'm sure your friends and family and your fans online are so grateful for you and your health and all the things that you're doing, your bright sunshine that's put out into the world.
Thank you.
Again, reminder, his website is pressureluckcooking.com. And again, the links are in the show notes, including your social media handles and all of that. Is there one particular social media outlet that you like to hang out at? YouTube, Instagram?
I would say YouTube is probably one of my big ones for sure. Yeah. So all you got to do is type in pressure, like pressure cooking, luck, and you'll find me.
Yes.
Just put it in anywhere. You'll find my handles, but I have to get up on the TikTok. That's like the hot thing now, and I'm totally behind. So, yeah.
Pressure cooking on TikTok. That might be a whole new avenue. Who
Yeah,
knows?
well, let's see.
So, my final question for you today is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today. Someone somewhere in the world is listening to you and I right now. She's got an Instant Pot. It's sitting on her counter. She has not pulled it out of the package because she is absolutely intimidated by it. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Wow. I would whisper and I would tell her, you can do this. It's only dinner. It's only dinner. It's only dinner. And like I said, pizza's one phone call away if it fails. That's all I was. You can do this is what I would tell them.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Mary. It was a lot of fun.